All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of the YouTube universe. My name is Jamin Richard Marshall, and today I have my good friend Johnny Bourbon right here. Hello, dude. How's it going?
It's going great.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Thank
well,
you.
thanks for being here. So I want to talk a little bit about this COVID-19 disaster that's going on, and it's impacted us in many ways, especially certain industries more than others, such as musicians and performers. So I wanted to get into first, like, how this has changed your approach to interacting with your fans, and how you've kind of, if you've been getting into live streams and things like that, and performing on Zoom and things like this.
It's changed everything. There's no live shows and no foreseeable date that anybody gets to return to those. I know, a lot of people that had full tours and stuff coming up had to cancel those. And for a lot of our friends that are like full-time musicians, that's been really tough for them. I mean, it's luckily for me, that's not the case. We weren't out touring much yet. So, but yeah, I mean, shows got canceled and now we're just kind of winging it. It's definitely forced me to try to get better at the whole internet presence and sharing that way. Because this, all the live streaming and internet interview stuff like this using Skype and Zoom and all that is pretty kind of intimidating and awkward at first. So you're like we're all adjusting to it.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, in other ways, it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe getting you to catch up with maybe where the rest of the world was with all this video stuff.
That's how I feel about it. Yeah.
There's some good in there that's coming out of this. I think it's we have to be creative with how we get the content out now too, which you already did. It's not like it was easy for independent musicians before.
No.
But most people I know that are creative people tend to do their best work when they're kind of pinned in a corner, right? So
yeah, I was thinking about how much creation is going to happen. How many songs are going to be written right now? It's going to be a lot,
Yeah, I've been writing a ton.
Yeah. Yeah, I just talked with my brother on here too. My brother is an optimist too, like you. I feel the same way. It's like, yeah, there's some terrible things happening, but there's also some good things happening. And yeah, I think us learning how to do this shit is one of those things.
It's easy to be frustrated when bad things happen, but it's like, bad things are happening to everybody right now. So it's kind of like, what do you can be, oh fuck, the shows are canceled, but I think we're past that phase and everybody's just kind of figuring out how to navigate it now. And that's what you do, right? Yeah. And that's what you've been doing all this time. You've just been figuring out how to navigate the landscape of trying to get your music out there. So there's no point. I'm not always the most optimistic person, but I definitely know when there's no point in being pessimistic, when it's time to give up that ship and move on to something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a way, it brings us all together because everybody's fucked right now. It's like, sometimes in life you're like, oh man, I took the wrong road. This is all shitty. Like I went with the wrong idea. It's, I don't have any money. I don't have a place to live. But in this situation, it's like everybody is screwed. So we can all kind of get together and not feel like, oh, woe is me,
Yeah, if we get out of it without the streets being on fire, then there's a good chance it might level the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think so. Yeah, I wanted to get into your new album, Arizona. So are you the lead songwriter for the Roof Rabbits?
I mean, I generally, and it's not by it's not like for any particular reason that it's like this, but generally I just write a lot, so if I have something that I think will work with the band when we have time that we're practicing and we're not just rehearsing for a show or something, and we're able to just kind of jam around, bring something new to the table. I usually set aside, the new stuff that I think that would fit good with the band, and then just jam it around a little bit and see if anything clicks before we get into rehearsing and stuff. It's not for any particular reason. I just tend to write a lot. But we've definitely wanted to do a little bit more with Sam doing some writing, or us like co-writing stuff together, because he's a great songwriter too. I mean, he did Tuck and Roll all those years as well, which is what makes our dynamic fit really well. Sam and Sean have already played together for nearly a decade, right? So I mean, it's easy to jump right into that thing, and you have these guys that already work really well together that can just tune into what a song needs. Not so much it's like, and so I bring them basically a song I wrote on the acoustic. I might have an idea of what it's going to sound like. There's usually, verse, chorus, bridge, whatever. But if there's missing pieces, those guys are great at filling in the gaps. I mean, Sam still has a lot of composing credit in those songs as well. I mean, it's like by the time that I'm done, that we're done working it together, it's a little bit different of a song than when it started. And that's what good. Working with a group of guys is all about anyway.
That's good.
I learned how to let go of being too particular about how you wrote the song, because by the time it comes to the band, it's going to be something different. And then same as by the time you release it, it doesn't really belong to you anymore. It's up to people's interpretation, right?
And that's what makes the Roof Rabbits, not just Johnny Bourbon. So you guys create together. Jamming and creating a song when you're a 3-piece 4-piece band is pretty good and easy to do, and then when you're 6 or 7, it's not gonna happen.
It gets a lot more complicated for sure. We've had a 4th member before, and we tried it a few ways. We had a kid playing bass, Tyler Parsons from Corner Gospel Explosion, for a while. He's a great bass player, and he joined up with us for a while. And we had fun, it was cool to have like a young guy in the band. Like I wasn't the youngest guy in the band finally. and he's like, in his early 20s, so he knew all the internet stuff really well. And
you got a good use for him there.
He teaches you about Instagram, you teach him about Bloody Marys and shit. So. It was fun, but after he had to leave, then it was like, well, I don't know, Sam can play the bass. Like Sam's like, I don't need to play lead guitar. Why not just try this? And that's actually how we started.
Okay,
so
cool.
We started the band that way, and then our old bass player from Harley Bourbon wanted to be a part of it, and then he had to move. And we went back to a 3-piece, and then we got a bass player, and then we went back to a 3-piece, and then we were kind of just like, fuck it.
Lock it in there. Yeah.
This is where we're at, and if we're making good albums this way, then we might as well just, keep it.
You're making great albums. With Arizona, it's just the 4 songs, and you had intended to drop it and then go on tour, right? Is that what? Or had you? Was it a while before this shit?
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, because a lot of the time leading up to this, we haven't been able to tour. I mean, when the band first got together, like 2.5 years ago or so, Sam had just had a baby, so there's no way we were leaving town. We weren't, it was like touring wasn't really on the table at all. So it was like maybe when things are a little bit, when the kid grows up enough to calm down, and it's not such a hassle for the mom, or it's not so overwhelming. It was their first kid too, so it was a big deal. And so touring wasn't on the table at all, and we were just getting ready to be like, okay, the kid's like 2 now. We can leave for like longer than just a weekend sometimes. It's like, Roof Rabbit's probably never going to be like a full-time touring band unless there was like money, which, there likely won't be. So
it's that money thing is it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. So until then, it's like we just try to make the shows that we play count. It's like if you can pick good stuff, try to get on better stuff than you've gotten on in the past. Get into a couple of festivals or something, and basically just ride the the weekend or, 5-day tour type thing.
Yeah. And that's really what it, like, from the road dog perspective, that's what you're wanting to get to. Also, when you go like
Right.
so fucking much, and then you're like, when we got into our 30s, we were trying to cut it back down to 2 weeks at the most at a time. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I know I learned a lot just watching you guys, It was like, not just watching your performances, but like watching what you guys were doing and how you were navigating that.
yeah,
Everybody was, everybody from where we're from. It was like, oh, okay. And to see like, you guys tried a lot of different stuff, and it was like, all you got to do, and you're all pretty personable, so we could talk to you and be like, well, I don't want to get in a bus and drive all the way across the country.
yeah,
I'm glad you did, but I
yeah.
don't think you can pull that off.
It's fucking crazy, man. The shit that we did, like reminiscing with Alex the other day. I think you saw some of that, and like,
Yeah.
talking to my brother, and I always wanted to have something like this, some kind of dialogue going on with band guys, and have people be able to see it, because it's a very different approach to life, and I don't recommend it for everybody, and I don't recommend it for myself anymore, but it's educational, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
It sets you up so you can see, your limits. It's good to know your limits,
Right.
what you're capable of.
Yeah, it's like, and you definitely want to chase, something passionately, but at the same time, you still get burnt out. You still get tired.
You don't want
I
to
mean, and yeah, once you hit 30, you do start thinking a lot more about your health.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yep.
I feel like the early 20s, you're kind of just like, I'm not gonna fucking make it, man. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
And then like you hit
absolutely.
27, you're like, well, it's not gonna be cool if I die now. So
Exactly. Yeah, you
I've got
don't.
to make a game plan. Fuck.
Yeah, I hit 30 and I was like, holy shit, what am I gonna do now? I didn't die yet. I better get wise.
Right. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I like to think I'm a little bit more wise now. But yeah, I wanted to touch on your music video too. History Repeats, right?
Yeah.
Do you have another one, or that's the only one I could find?
No, we haven't done another one yet.
Yeah.
It was kind of just like, hey, we've never done a music video. Let's try. We had a little bit of money in the band fund at the time, so
Yeah.
wanted to try to do something low budget but still like okay. So
Yeah.
we did that, and it was just shot. It was shot in one day. I have
Really?
the painted room in there is my art studio out here on my family ranch. So I have a space where I can paint and make a mess, and so yeah, that big wall behind us is every lyric from the album is on that wall.
Okay.
And I painted it like during the making of Creature Comforts when we were doing that. We took like some photos in front of it and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was kind of just a fun, chaotic art project. So we're like, oh, let's shoot like some of us like playing in there, and then just tie it in with some movie references and such. Bunny suit.
Yeah.
Just have fun.
The song itself and the music video even really hit home for me, and I watched it a few times just yesterday and today, kind of on repeat, and it hit home for me because it was like on a certain level, it's like a feeling of not wanting to follow my parents' footsteps, and also not repeat my family history and my family's problems with booze and
Right.
shit like that. So it spoke to me on a personal level for sure. And even though you said you want to keep it within a budget, it still came across really well. I like it a lot. It's awesome, dude.
Yeah, that's what we're all trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. It means a lot.
So to everybody out there who want to know all the details, so your music can be found on Spotify, iTunes, the Roof Rabbits, bandcamp.com, right? All of those places.
Yep. We got we got the Facebook and the Instagram, but more importantly, the music's on Bandcamp, Spotify, Apple Music, all over. I just got the stuff done to have Arizona put on Spotify. I just like split up the release because I wanted to see if people would just buy it directly from us first,
right,
and then put it on the Spotify later. So yeah, it should be on Spotify as well here pretty soon.
Good.
But yeah, all the normal avenues for consuming music.
Cool. Yes. Everybody go out there and get it. Go to the roofrabbits.bandcamp.com and buy it right now today, and then
Yeah,
listen to it on Spotify later. But yeah, it is. Arizona's the new release. It's 4-song EP. It's powerful, man. I really, really, really dig it. And I think that you guys, and like I was listening to it with Victoria, and it's got a new element to it. And I almost wanted to, like, it stuck out to me that it was kind of like there's a 90s sound going on there to my ear.
Yeah, totally.
And then I saw the poster behind you there, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to get it a little bit. It hit me. I listened to Arizona over and over again, and then I was like, okay, it's like the backup vocals and something to do with the phrasing reminds me of the Pixies a little bit. I don't know if you dig the Pixies, but
a lot of Pixies influence in all three of us. So that was part of how this project developed as well. We were like, there's a lot that we like in the 90s and there's a lot that we hate in the 90s, and it's like because of that the 90s gets kind of a bad rap or people are over it, but we're like, I don't know, I feel like it's going to come back around, and why can't we like be more open about the fact that we like Nirvana? And it's like I still like everything else too, but it's like it's like, and there was never, I think in the 90s there might have been this big war between like early pop punk and like grunge, and then like the actual or like the early punk rock scene versus when Nirvana came about, and it's like those guys grew up with the Melvins and shit too. Like I've been to the Melvins' old house in Cosmopolis, Washington. I grew up in Aberdeen basically, so
okay, yeah, that's right.
It's just and up there the kids growing up fucking hated Nirvana because they hated the fact that they live in this shithole little town where everybody's on meth and heroin, and the only thing they're known for is this band, and their band is nothing like that band.
Right.
So there's like a lot of like dingy metal, and and that's just the way that, I don't know, that's the way any kid is that grows up in a shithole town.
Yeah.
But
I can feel that.
But then it's been all this time, and it's like, yeah, those things are pretty timeless, and like the early Nirvana stuff, even In Utero, is pretty fucking punk,
Yeah, I mean, shit gets overplayed, and then everybody takes out all this hatred on it, and it's not bad music at all. And there's some of it was very overplayed, yeah, but it's when you really listen to it and you get right down to it, they're fucking punk rockers, man. And and
then the commercial aspect of everything, it's like because that happened in that time, then there was this huge money grab that was like signing anything that sounded remotely like it, which created the commercial grunge sound, which was fucking garbage, so there's a lot of that. Like, no pun intended. I mean, garbage is okay, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's like there were good and bad things that came out of that, and then people who still continued on, like Mudhoney, continued to play the same music, and still does. But yeah, the Pixies is fucking great. That's a huge influence. Those albums, it's like Come On Pilgrim was recorded in 1989. That was the year I was born. And it's like I grew up loving the Pixies. It's crazy to think, like, I think it was 1989, maybe 87.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was 89.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, they pumped out 3 albums at the end of the 80s that were like nothing like the 80s, right? And then kind of defined the 90s in a lot of ways. So it's like, we all love that shit, like I said. And even on the first album, there's a little bit of an embrace. It's like, can we take the things that we love about pop punk and also do our own thing, and also embrace these other influences that I feel like people were just shunning for a long time. Like everybody had a secret love of some of these bands, like in the closet. Like they don't want to wear like a Pixie shirt to this show or something.
It's ridiculous.
They wouldn't be punk rock or something. It's like
I love the Pixies, man.
Yeah,
they're fucking got some.
And
really
then
weird
a lot
shit.
of good overlooked 90s bands and early pop punk stuff too, that's like stuff like Jawbreaker, where it's like now Jawbreaker is kind of a household name, but for a long time, there was this big, shunning of Jawbreaker,
Yeah.
because they got offered to go on tour with Nirvana at some point, and the whole scene that they came from, like, alienated them, and it was just ridiculous,
Dude, the whole
politics.
sellout thing is just,
Yeah.
it's so ridiculous. When you're young, you have all these opinions and you don't know what the hell it's like to try to make a living at music and
Yeah.
eat, be able to
Yeah,
eat.
and you just think you're right all the time too. It's like, 17-year-old angry punk rock kids just think that they're right.
And most of the time you're living at home. You don't fucking know. You don't like have to make it on your own, really. And then, as time goes on, you're like, man, I wish I could afford to sleep in a hotel room while we're on tour. And then, yeah. But anyway, okay, so we covered that, but I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about, your personal experience with how you came to be a musician. Can you remember if there's a moment that stands out to you in your young life where something that happened where you decided you wanted to play music, where you really wanted to make it a serious endeavor or follow it?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember. I remember the weirdest things about my childhood. Like, I remember dumb things that seemed to be completely pointless from when I was like 4 years old, 5 years old, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very odd memory, but I do remember specific times that I knew this was going to be a passion. Like, I've always had a thing with words. I've always been a poet of some kind, right? And as I started writing poetry really young, like elementary school, like I was writing poems all the time. I just latched onto it. And when I was like 5 years old, my sisters and my brother had to go. We have different dads, so they were kind of taken away and had to go live with their dad. I'd only ever known them. I hadn't known any other kids, and so yeah, I was really, really depressed when that happened, right?
Yeah.
And I just started singing. Like, I'd go out there and I'd sing about how much I miss them. Like, I miss my sisters, I miss my brother. And it was like, dude, you can imagine this kid just walking around like a gumshoe,
Yeah.
singing about his friends that he misses. But that's pretty much how it started, like with lyrics and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ever since then, like, I've always put my alone time, and my loneliness and stuff like that into songs and poems. And then a little bit later, I find stuff like Shel Silverstein. These are kids' books, right? I start reading like Shel Silverstein and, obviously Dr. Seuss and stuff you're already familiar with when you're a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, you get into middle school and you start like getting crushes on girls, and then you're like writing them poems, right?
Yeah.
It was totally
see
cheesy.
now, yeah.
But I was always fucking writing, man. And I always, even though like poetry was never, it was never popular. It's like, kids and teenagers are not really gonna like poetry.
Yeah.
But I was, and by the time I got into like middle school and high school and stuff, I was like starting to read some poetry as well, and just like digging a little bit. By the time I'm in high school, I like discover beat poets and Bukowski and Allen Ginsberg and Ferlinghetti and stuff, and start to like branch into that world. So that's kind of what got me into lyrics, right? I hadn't played the guitar until I was like 13 or 14. I started just like picking up the guitar, and over years, by watching people and hanging out with people and smoking weed and playing guitar, then I started learning more and more. But ultimately, I started writing songs because I was like, no one's gonna hear my words if I can't play guitar. No one's ever gonna hear these words. I'm not just gonna be a fucking singer.
Yeah.
So, I'm not gonna get up there and just be a singer.
Yeah, you
So
gotta be a guitarist as well.
I gotta bring a fucking song to the table, and so that's when I started putting more and more time into learning chords and stuff.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I think I was like 15. I started going to some local punk shows in Aberdeen. I was living outside of there. I was living in Ocean Shores, Washington, and we'd take the bus or you jump in somebody's car and you'd go to the next town over, you'd go into Aberdeen to these like local punk shows that were pretty much put on by the kids.
Yeah.
There was this spot called Alfie's, which was a motorcycle shop. This old like retired biker dude runs a motorcycle shop, and he had the upstairs of his building was just cleared out. Fucking anything goes. Hey, you kids can throw shows here. And so the deal.
Yeah.
And that's when I first started like going to punk shows, 15, 16 years old, out in Aberdeen. And then there was a band called Jack Move from Longview area. And that band was the first band that made me really want to get on stage. I mean, I would go fucking nuts at their concerts, It was just like, it was the coolest thing, this like hellbilly fucking rock and roll shtick, just classic punk sounds. It was a lot like a mix between like Motorhead and Zeke, but then like a little bit catchier, It's like a little bit catchier, a little bit bouncier, but they shredded. And that, you can still find that album on BandCamp as well. If you look up Jack Move, Longview, Washington, it's a good album. It's called Too Pissed for Hard Love. And that one, Too Pissed for Hard Love, that one made me want to be in a band.
Yeah. Too Pissed for Hard Love. That's a great title.
And actually those guys nowadays, I don't know what everybody's doing, but two of them up there are playing in a new band called Magnitudes, and I actually had the pleasure of running into them. They came down here for a show a couple months ago with their new project. So it was fun to like be an adult, like 15 years later, I'm 30 now.
Yeah.
And be like, when I was 15 years old, you made me want to get on stage, it's like, that's a pretty cool thing.
That's awesome.
And here I am, like I've been playing a long time.
Yeah.
I play in bars too.
Do you have musicians in your family?
Yeah, it's pretty odd though. Like we weren't taught. So my parents don't play music at all. My dad, both my parents were born. Well, my mom was born in Ellensburg, Washington, but she kind of grew up in California around Mission Viejo. And my dad was born in California in Escondido, and he kind of grew up in that early punk scene of the 70s there. So he was like a hardcore punk rocker when he was 15, 16 years old, like making his own clothes, and he had a big, egg white mohawk and shit.
Yeah.
And apparently back in his day, he played a little bass, and stuff like that. And he wrote tons of poetry as well. I think that kind of comes from him. I don't know. But by the time I was born, man, like, no, nobody played music. Like, my sister picked around on the guitar a little bit. And, but for whatever reason, all of us kids were very musical. It's like we all loved to sing. We all loved music. We all shared a lot of music with each other. It's really interesting. And before that, I guess what's weird, it's like, does music run in the family type thing? Nobody ever taught us this stuff. But my grandma's parents were in the Barnum and Bailey Circus, and her mom was a piano player, and her dad was a clown and a banjo player.
Wow.
And they were, during the Great Depression, they would tour around with the oldest daughter in the trunk of the car, following the circus, playing piano and banjo. So I think that is pretty interesting. And then my grandma's first husband, Perry, I never met him because he died when my mom was just a kid. But his whole family was musical, and he played banjo. Perry was a banjo player. We still have his banjo around here, hanging on the wall. So
yeah,
it's really odd that nobody ever taught us music, but we kind of grew up doing it.
So interesting how that comes down. You don't even
Yeah.
You need to know it, and it's there in your DNA somehow. I don't know how that works exactly, but it does tend to happen that way.